2013 to order, please. If you have a cell phone, I'd appreciate it if you'd turn it to buzz or vibrate or something for us. Thank you very much. Ms. Bach, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Winger?
Here.
Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mrs. Turner?
Here.
Mrs. Carroll?
Here.
Mayor Fletcher?
The mayor is here. This is going to be the same thing we did the last time. We're going to have the public hearing for the ordinance of the City of Vero Beach, Florida, providing a levy of ad valorem taxes for the fiscal year 2013-2014 at a millage rate of 2.0336, which equates to $2.0336 per $1,000 of assessed property value. At this time, we're going to have the staff do their dance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick review of the requirements, as this is our final formal public budget hearing. The law requires that the first substantive issue that we discuss at this meeting is the percent increase in the millage rate over the rolled back rate that we need to fund this budget and any reason for that increase. In this particular case, the proposed budget you have in front of you for adoption is funded at the prior year millage rate of 2.0336, which does happen to be 0.96% more than the rolled back rate of 2.0142. As we discussed at the first public hearing, the reason for that is that we are still in the process of finalizing our negotiations with the unions. What you have in front of you is a budget with an unappropriated surplus of $227,000, and we feel that, in the context of a $19 million operating budget, that's not untoward amount of reserve pending the outcome of these union negotiations, because the budget does make some assumptions about the success of our position. The other three things to keep in mind: we do need to adopt the millage rate first before we adopt the budget, and those have to be done by separate votes, and they are separate ordinances. You are required to take comments, and the general public is allowed to speak and ask questions before you adopt either of these measures, because these are public hearings. And then before we adopt the millage levy ordinance, we are required to publicly announce the name of our taxing authority, the rolled back rate, the percent of increase over the rolled back rate, and the final adopted millage rate. And if you would, allow Ms. Vach to read sections 1 and 2 of that millage ordinance into the record before you take your vote and after the motion. And with that, turn it over to you to open the public hearing on the millage.
Great.
Just
ahead,
as a
Jim.
comment also, there was discussion on the $227,000. It is very important that we know the big issue, one of the big issues that we have facing us is the transition from the defined benefit plan to the defined contribution plan. There is going to be a cost exposure in that first year in order to get us over that, and it's what I refer to as purchasing our future risk.
Buy your way in.
And so we will need a little flexibility in there. We're just not sure how much.
This is a public hearing. It's for this portion will be for the millage rate. Does anybody in the public would like to speak? Please come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion on the floor?
Do we get to answer? I'll make a motion to approve the millage.
Do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second it.
Under discussion.
Under discussion, Cindy, we're going to make a $700,000 debt service payment. Is my understanding we're doing that this year?
We actually have an annual debt service payment requirement for that amount up to, I think this is defeased in 2016. So for the next 2 or 3 years, we have the remaining debt service payments on this particular loan.
So 2016, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to know when that accelerated payment expires.
Any other discussion?
I do have a question. I do have an item on the agenda for later this evening discussing the ramifications to the city of Vero Beach with the implementation of the All Aboard Florida, as the tracks through our town are double tracked, and the costs will need to be borne by the city for the upgrades to the crossing mechanisms. Do we have contingent funding available for that? And what do we, Jim? I know you went to a meeting last week. Do we yet know what the time frame will be for the needs of the city to fund those required upgrades?
The answer to all those questions is no, we don't, but it's important to note that, for example, they are going to start construction, but their first point of construction probably will be, and we have a speaker tonight that can address some of these issues, there's 35 miles of track they have to do in order to get to the Orlando airport, which will be number one. Number two is setting the track and doubling the track in those areas where they're going to have double track will also be a time-consuming. So I think what the information that was conveyed to us is they hope to start some of their construction by the 2014. We have not positioned ourselves with what those costs will be because we really don't, and I don't think they know what those costs will be. Some of them are going to be optional costs that if we want to impose them on ourselves, then we can do that. For example, the quiet zone issue. And, some of the estimates on quiet zone getting across Highway 60 is somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000. So those will be things that we would elect to do. There are other things, for example, landscaping that we've talked about. Again, some of that will be self-imposed as to what we would do. Then we're going to have to generate where the funds would come in order to address that.
It seems like there's no ramifications to this year's budget then.
No, ma'am, I don't think so.
All right. That was my question then. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Ms. Bach?
Section 1, the City of Vero Beach, Florida shall levy a general ad valorem tax of 2.0336 mills against the value of all real and tangible personal property within the city limits subject to taxation on the first day of January 2013 to finance current operating expenses of the city. The tax shall be assessed and collected in the manner provided by law. Section 2. The fiscal year 2013-2014 operating millage rate of 2.0336 levied hereby is greater than the rollback millage rate of 2.0142 mills by 0.96%.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor in a second. Ms. Bach, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Winger?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner?
No.
Mrs. Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor Fletcher?
Yes, passes 4-1. Under public hearings, item 2B, an ordinance of the City of Vero Beach, Florida, adopting the annual budget of the city for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2013, and ending September 30th, 2014, appropriating funds for the operating expenses, supplies, and personnel, and otherwise appropriating funds for the effective and efficient operation of the government of the City of Vero Beach, Florida, and its departments, such appropriations being from anticipated revenues, providing for a means to amend the budget to carry forward the funding of purchase orders, work orders, and grants outstanding as of September 30th, 2013, providing a means to amend the annual budget to reflect grants received after September 30th, 2013, and authorizing the transfer of funds appropriate so long as the local combined appropriation shall not be increased thereby, providing for an effective date. Your show again.
One brief comment. The budget you have in front of you has been changed based on your direction at the first public hearing to restore the crime scene investigator position to the police department, and there was no increase to the overall police department budget. The way we accomplished that, again, per our discussion at the first public hearing, was that we replaced one captain's position with an entry-level officer position and used those savings to put back the crime scene investigator and distributed some of the rest to operating costs associated with that additional patrol officer. So there's no net change at all to the police department budget, but we did replace that one position.
Are there any questions of staff?
Just a clarification that we currently have 399 employees and we're approving a budget for 403 for next year.
At this point, I would say, and Lynn's here, we've had some turnover in the last month or so. So some of the positions that you're authorizing for next year are empty right now and in the process of being filled. I know at least within my department, I've had 2 or 3 positions turn over in the last month and a half.
But still, despite whatever reductions in force we're making, I just wanted that to be clear to the public. Thank you.
This is a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to the council about this issue, please come forward. Give us your name and address, please.
Let me get this. Amelia Graves, 1836 21st Avenue, Vero Beach, Florida. Thank you for letting me speak. Before you approve this budget, I just have a quick question about funding for the police department. I see that in 2012 and 2013, the lieutenants and captains agreed to a temporary reduction of 4.62% of their salary, and that's being given back in this budget. But the rank and file officers, patrolmen, and detectives who gave up their step-level raises are not receiving their raises back. So I'm wondering why those officers are not being treated the same as the upper management officers in the police department.
Be very happy to address that. The 4.62 was actually a reduction in the base salary of those employees, and it was not just police. It was throughout the organization at 70,000 and above. There was no reduction in pay in the base salary of any police officer other than those that would be restored in this budget.
So for this budget also, were they required to up some of their own personal increases towards insurance and retirement?
There will be it depends. If you choose, for example, in our health insurance, if you stay with that, the high plan, which is the most expensive plan to the city, there will be a cost increase to the employee for that. And that would be, again, organization-wide, not just the police department.
Okay, but they're not going to get their step-level raises back in this budget year?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. And then I have one other question about the police department as well, with losing the records specialist. So now the police officers are required to enter in their own records. So they're being staffed at $30 an hour, let's say, to do a job that someone at $12 an hour did more efficiently. So instead of being out on patrol or being proactive in the community, they're behind a computer. Does that seem like a good allocation of resources?
I think it's a choice of many people that we want to have employed with the city in the processes that we're doing, and that was a fundamental discussion, I think, throughout this budget process. And the charge to us was that we needed to reduce the number of positions within the total organization, how we arrange those positions. And I don't think the chief, nor would I, endorse taking an officer off the road and making that a clerk position. So therefore we took the highest and best positions that we had and then try to cover that administratively. And the question is, I guess it really is fundamental, we could add a payroll of another $40,000 and cover that process, or we can take the time on the road officer themselves and make that work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else like to speak before the council on the issue? Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, all. Mark Muture, 617 Indian Lilac Road. I know it's a little late, but you just reminded me of something I've been meaning to ask or wondering about for a long time. Jim just said if somebody takes the higher plan, it costs the city more. I never understood why that was. Why doesn't the city contribute a fixed amount, and if somebody takes a higher plan, they pay the difference?
I've asked that question before, too, Mark.
We are in the process of doing that. That's part of the negotiations, and it is doing it. For example, our goal, and we're bargaining and negotiating in good faith with the Teamsters, there will not be a high plan. There will be only 2 plans available, but we are negotiating and working in that direction. And the reallocation of how we pay.
Will you pay more for the second plan?
No. The way we are going to do is fix the rate as what the city's expense would be no matter what plan someone takes.
However, the concept is that if an employee is married and they chose to bring their wife onto the plan, the city would pay more for that specific employee in order to pay for his wife as well. And if an employee had family, then the city will pay an even greater amount for that employee and their family than they would for just a single person that chose to take a job with the city and chose to go on the insurance.
That is correct. We do pay a portion of both the spouse or a portion of the family. The theory being is an employee is not going to be very good to you if his youngest son is sick and in the hospital and there is no insurance covering that employee. There's no way that an employee making $32,000 a year could afford $1,200 a month in health insurance. And that would be the key. What I think we would see, and based on all studies and information we have read, the employees would choose not to take the insurance coverage, and ultimately it costs you in the end.
Okay. Have you benchmarked these plans? Is it only city government or only Vero Beach city government that pays more for higher plans and pays more for dependent coverage?
Every city that I have seen and talked to pay for the spouse or family a portion thereof. St. Lucie County, or the city of Port St. Lucie, for example, pays 100%. So we have looked at other cities. But we have looked at other cities. And at the same time, what we're trying to do is drive the city's cost per employee down, and we think we have done that.
Okay, and did I see you are shifting companies after
yes,
only
we
one
are.
year?
Blue Cross Blue Shield has served for about 30 years based on the experience we've had, but their bid was somewhere in the neighborhood between 17 and 18% increase, where United was 12%, and so there was a savings.
Mm-hmm.
And we received information that United was having adequate coverage of physicians throughout the county now.
That is correct. United, there was a few physicians that would not be. We've made employees aware of those, but the fact of the matter is 90% of the employees, their physicians would be covered under this plan.
Yeah, I've had both, and they're both.
Mark,
I've had both, and they're both good.
Your question is a good question, though, Mark. Of course, we cannot compare apples to oranges and compare private industry to government in terms of their insurance, but it would be interesting to find out large corporations, for instance, Piper and some of our other corporations, the hospital district, throughout the community, if they are offering the same type of family, a greater percentage of funding to when there's family coverage or when there's spousal coverage than just private.
As I say, it's very late. It's
we can find that
literally
out.
The last minute, but maybe next year
Next
you can
time.
keep some of those ideas in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else in the audience would like to speak to the council about the issue? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion to adopt as presented?
I'll make a motion to adopt
Second.
as presented.
Ms. Vach?
Just under discussion,
Under
real
discussion.
quick. I just wanted to ask a question of Jim on. We were going through union negotiations, which is part of the reasoning that we're going to hold back this. Was it $227,000?
Just a portion of the reason, but yes, you need to have a reserve or unrestricted funds. For example, if we have another dune restoration need, we're going to have, and I know we budgeted $40,000 in there, but it was $150,000 this year, and we're hoping that we don't have hurricanes. But out of $19 million, $227,000 is a lot of money, but percentage-wise is a relatively small percentage.
I understand that, but when are you thinking about the conclusion of those negotiations?
Well, we have another meeting coming Friday, and I'd like to conclude it at that time, but I don't think that's going to occur.
Well, my thought is that if it just perhaps one more quarter, for sure you would have a good answer.
In the next quarter of
The idea is that we would have another budget probably coming. Do we normally try to look at that?
that'll
like
be
every
the 1st of
3-4 months?
October.
No, the budget amendment thing is at your discretion. I mean, last year we did it twice. This year we have just one year-end amendment because we've held the line on the budget. So certainly you can amend the budget as many times and for whatever reason you want throughout the year.
But Mr. O'Connor, I believe you had mentioned at the last meeting that we were at impasse had been requested, and that may delay the finalization of these contracts.
That is on the police, and that is the wage opener of police. The Teamsters, we have not reached impasse, and we hope we do not reach impasse, but we are down to the issues of pension and health insurance and also the wage.
Thank you, Jim. Any other questions, comments? I have a motion and a second. Ms. Vach?
Mr. Winger?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner?
No.
Mrs. Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor Fletcher?
Yes. Passes unanimously 4-2.
No.
Excuse me.
Unanimously.
Passes
4-1.
4-1.
4-1.
4-1.
4-1.
4-2.
4-2.
I hope not.
Over there.
Is there anything else to come before the meeting for the special call meeting? Hearing none, we are adjourned. We will re-adjourn at 6 o'clock for the regular meeting.